Okay, so this is going to be a review of some of the fun stuff about Illustrator that you probably don't know yet. I had reviewed this in class, but I didn't have my laptop that day, so I wasn't recording, so I'm doing this later, but hopefully you can still find it useful. Maybe for some part of your scene. So the first thing is the perspective tool. I just made this little star that I'll probably use for almost everything in here. But the thing about the perspective tool is I usually will use it not in the file I'm actually working in. So for that, I just don't like the kind of clutter it makes. It also always wanting to go to the middle of your entire art area. So if we zoom out, you can kind of see the edges of it there. There it is. So it'll come right in the middle. So even if you had like 20 different artboards, it still pops in the middle, and I find it very inconvenient. So yeah, I always just make a new one. So pop this open. And then the perspective tool has two parts to it. Some of you may have used it just once or twice in my digital illustration or foundations class. Some of you might not have yet. So there's two parts, and they work in tandem. You can't actually do anything in perspective without it. It has, when you turn on the perspective tool, obviously this grid pops up. The default is a 2-point perspective, and you might want to have a different kind, so we'll see where to find that. And then they work in tandem with this little guy up here. So right now the blue is lit up, that's default, so that would be this side. The other one is this side. And then when you have something that's in the other kind of perspective, like a 3-point, then you could use one of these. Under window, if you go all the way down, it's going to be under grids, under view, and you can't quite see it here. It's like right off screen for me, but right under smart guides is mine. And if you look at it, there are 3 different possibilities for perspective. I'm going to click on them so you can see them on screen. So there's the 1-point. Zoom out here. And then 2-point is the default. And then 3. So there's the 1-point. And typically we see that like train tracks. That's probably the most typical one people utilize. The other one you just saw was the 2-point, so I'll skip that one, and I'll go over to the 3-point perspective. And the 3-point looks similar to the 2-point. It does have 2 points on the horizon line, but in addition it has like this top view, or depending on how you pull it, you might see a different view. So these ones are all about horizon lines and then where you want to go from there. So if I pull up, zoom out a little bit again, eventually at some point I leave what we call the bird's eye view, where you can see the top of the building, to worm's eye view, which means like you're down on the ground and looking up. You can change the placement of a few things on these grids. Some of them are trickier to move than others, but you can grab, hold, and modify where some of the items are. Stretch them out, pull them in, you get the idea. So it does help to know a little bit about perspective before you even start, but it is a beginning point. So I'm going to go back to 2-point. It's probably a little easier to use. All right. Now, one thing I will say about the grid also is that when you click it, all of a sudden this grid is just sitting here, and it won't actually go away. In truth, it's always sitting there. It's just not visible to us as like guides or grids. So if you want to turn it off, you do have to go to the perspective grid and actually tell it to hide, which is the first option. I'm sorry, you can't see it on the screen, but it's the very first thing there. So, yeah, let me turn the grid back on so you can see it. I wonder if it'll click back on. Yeah, it'll click back on if I just click on the tool again. All right, so in this case, I'm probably not going to change too much. Yeah, you can change how many like the frequency of the grid. You can change, again, like the speed of what we're looking at. So what I'm going to show is how to apply, get that star back in here, how to apply a shape. So you have your grid, you have your shape, and then right now I'm turned on the orange. I'll just go ahead and flip the blue back on. Oops, well, let me do it right, yeah. Selection tool, there we go. And now my grid is responding, or I should say my object is responding to the grid. So it's a matter of turning on the grid, and then also, let's see if I can switch. Yeah, it's once it's attached to one side, it kind of wants to permanently attach to it. Let me put another one in, switch the side, see if I can get it to go on this one. Yeah, there we go. So you can have multiple objects reacting to the same basic grid structure. But at this point then, I typically will take my items, grab them, and then move them into the file where I wanted those items to exist. So they are now independent of the grid. So if I move them around, you can see that they're not changing. Whereas if I was here, they would, you know, oh, I took it off of there. We have to be on the perspective grid for that to work correctly. So I guess the big takeaway for me is that it's easiest if you do not use the grid in the file that you are trying to have your items in, which might seem a little bit funny, but I think when you use it more, you'll understand why. So anyway, that's the perspective grid tool. It can be really fun for text, and all other kinds of objects if you need it there. Certainly if you're building a building, like, then it would make a ton of sense to just utilize what's already there for you. Now in this case, I want to show you, see how this is starting to shrink again? And that's because it's responding to the grid that's underneath, even though we can't see it, because I'm actually on that tool. Once you're on a different tool, then it's no longer going to respond. So yeah, turn this grid off again, and again, go to perspective grid, under view, and now it's gone. All right, so that's that one. Next one are color swatches. I'm going to do that in a separate video, I think.